Good afternoon, I'm Jonathan. I'm the Everyday Fitness Guru. Today's exercise we're going to be talking about is a deadlift. Now, I love the deadlift. I love the deadlift the way I love the squat, the way I love the chest press or the pull-up, because it's a compound motion and we're using multiple joints. We're getting a lot of muscles involved, and that's what we want to do when we exercise. We want to get as much muscle involved as possible because that's going to help us bring up the overall intensity of the work. The difference between a squat and a deadlift, in that they're both working all of the muscles of the leg, is that with the squat, we begin up in the top position, we drop down to a lower position, and we come back up. So we're manipulating usually the resistance that we're holding from above our waist. Whereas with a deadlift, we're pulling the weight from below our waist, and we're lifting the weight up from the ground up as opposed from the top down. So again, with the squat, I start at the top, I go down to the bottom position, I come back up. On a deadlift, I'm starting from the bottom, I'm coming up, and I'm going back down. So basically, a deadlift is you're just picking something up from the ground, like luggage or suitcases, from the airport in the way that they recommended you do it. Okay, meaning you want to stabilize your lower back, you want to stabilize the middle of your back, you want to keep your spine in a nice natural alignment. You're going to be bending at your hips. There's going to be a slight bend at the knee. There's going to be movement at the ankle. So we're engaging all of the muscles of the leg. And for those of you who are not in New Orleans, that's our beautiful and historic streetcar passing by, something we have to deal with as we're filming these videos. So we're going to go into the deadlift. We're going to be working our glutes and our hamstrings primarily, along with the muscles of our spine, because you got to keep your spine nice and tight and stable as you do this movement. Okay, on a very simplified way, I'm going to use some kettlebells. I have two 10-pound kettlebells, but you could use any weight that you're able to manage. It could be a book bag filled with books. It can be a suitcase filled with clothing. It could be 2-gallon jugs of water that you've made ahead of time. The best thing about exercise that your body doesn't know, it can't differentiate between free weights, body weight, machine weight. Weight is weight to the muscle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to position these two kettlebells right in front of me. I'm going to stand with my feet about shoulder width apart. I'm going to squat down, so if you come around to the side, you can see me squatting down. You can see me from a side angle. I'm going to keep my chest lifted and my spine as erect as possible so that my back stays nice and straight. My head, my chin is going to be tilted down slightly so I can maintain a nice and neutral posture for the bones of my cervical spine. I'm going to squat down. I'm going to grab onto the weight, keeping my chest lifted. I'm going to come up nice and slow, about 3/4 of the way. I'm going to go back down nice and slow. As soon as I touch, I'm going to start squeezing back up. So I'm not allowing the weights to rest on the ground. I'm keeping tension on the muscles throughout the whole movement. If you look at me from the side, you notice that my hips bend, my knees bend. My knees shift forward and my ankle actually bends a little bit. And so I'm using all of the muscles of as many of the muscles of my body as possible. There's even some contraction in my upper back and my arms as I grab onto the weight. As the exercise gets more demanding, I'm making sure that I don't speed up the movement. I want to keep momentum and velocity to a bare minimum, so I'm just moving fast enough to get the movement going, and I'm keeping it at that speed, not shifting and going faster, in spite of the fact that my muscles are burning and on fire. I want to be able to make this workout harder as it becomes more difficult. I want to use the explanation that I give most of my clients of how to bump up the intensity. I want to use that knowledge to be able to override my body's demand to want to make it easier. That's a basic deadlift. We could also do a stiff leg deadlift where I start with a slight bend in my knee. I'm going to lean over, I'm going to grab the weight. Keeping my spine as straight as possible, I'm coming up to about 3/4 of the way. If I come up all the way, all of this weight that I'm holding is just going through, it's compressing through my skeleton, and there's not a lot of load or tension on my muscles. At about this angle, I still have significant load on my muscles. There's still significant tension. The tension increases as I extend forward, I lean forward, I'm flexing at my hip, and the lever that is my hip all the way up to the crown of my head lengthens. And so right over here, the weight's pretty demanding. I'm not going to allow it to rest. I'm going to come right back up 3/4 of the way and back down nice and slow. Slight bend in my knee. Again, slight bend in my knee, keeping my chest lifted, my back nice and straight. Even with the 10 pounds, I'm starting to feel the muscles of my glutes and my hamstrings. My glutes, my tush muscles, my hamstrings working as much as possible. Some of the mistakes people make, you don't want to round your back off at the beginning of the motion. We don't want excessive flexion or curvature of the spine. We also don't want to hyperextend. So as it becomes more demanding, there's a sense of me having to lean back with the weight and do this. So this is excessive extension at the spine. A rounding of the back would be excessive flexion of the spine. Both of those put amounts of stress on the discs between the vertebra, each bone of the spine, in a way that we don't really need. So we want to avoid excessive flexion, we want to avoid excessive extension, especially when we load the body with weight, meaning when we apply the body, when we apply resistance to the body. That's called loading, and that's the deadlift. Great exercise, make sure you do it.